Those who refuse the gift of eternal life are condemned to wander in the darkness of eternal night. Coming this fall from SJS Direct. Actress Zoe Kravitz is throwing up a fuss because Hulu canceled her television series High Fidelity after one season. And according to her, Hulu has a lack of diversity due to this cancellation. However, when we take a critical examination of Zoe Kravitz's own personal life, we can clearly see that there's a lack of diversity in her own personal life. Now, your Zoe Kravitz is the daughter of a biracial woman, Lisa Bonet, and a biracial man, Lenny Kravitz. And her argument about there being a lack of diversity makes no logical sense when you start taking that critical examination of her personal life. Because according to your Zoe Kravitz in an article, she said she had no connection to black culture and wanted to do nothing with black culture. And your Zoe Kravitz makes this statement all while being on a show called High Fidelity, which is based on a 1980s movie featuring white actors and is being placed on the show basically to be a token on this show to represent an alphabet character passively and aggressively making a jab at black people, because this character is just there to be a fill-in, just to meet a diversity checkmark, and is not about presenting anything as related to black culture. So she's talking about a lack of diversity as related to Hulu, but Hulu really was not really genuine about presenting any diversity on the show, and the main reason why they got her to be on the show was so that they could meet a diversity quota. So her argument is really falling apart when you really start to think about it, and it further falls apart when you start to take a look at her own personal life, because here you have a biracial black woman who has put distance between herself and the black community, complaining about a lack of diversity on the show, but she has made no efforts to reach out to black audiences all throughout her career. Like her mother before her, Lisa Bonet, your Zoe Kravitz believes in the rainbow and is looking for roles on shows with predominantly white cast and looking to be elevated by these predominantly white audiences. And she sits there and wants to be elevated by these audiences and expresses nothing but contempt for black audiences. So what incentive do black audiences have to watch Zoe Kravitz in High Fidelity when the show has no content on it that is designed to appeal to black audiences? That's the main reason why this show's ratings tanked and the show performed so badly. The show had nothing in it to appeal to these black audiences out here, and they had no interest in watching a biracial actress who threw up a middle finger at black audiences. I mean, black men and black women, they would have gladly watched a show with a black character who was representing them and the black community, but they're not going to watch a character played by an actress who expresses contempt for black audiences. And that's something Zoe Kravitz really does not understand about how audiences work. You have to appeal to an audience and show them something that gives them an incentive to watch. They're not going to watch because you're light-skinned and pretty. That's what Zoe Kravitz thinks, but I'm sorry, that's just not how it works. You can't sit there and disrespect black audiences and then expect them to go watch your program. They're just going to walk away, and black audiences walked away in this case. Now, your Zoe Kravitz also sits there and talks about a lack of diversity on Hulu, but we see that there's no diversity in her personal life because your Zoe Kravitz, just a couple of years ago, married a white man. So here we have another one of these biracial black women with a white husband, and she's sitting there talking about a lack of diversity, but she's not going out here and having relationships with black men. She's sitting here with a white husband trying to appeal to white audiences, and then she wants to talk about a lack of diversity on Hulu, but you didn't give anybody a reason to go out here and watch you, because why should, again, black people support someone who has not made an effort to support us? So that's where I see your Zoe Kravitz being full of it on the argument on lack of diversity. You're sitting here talking about a lack of diversity on the Hulu network, but you made no efforts to go out here and include black people in your life. So you're sitting here saying, oh, we need to have diversity as related to a show you're on, and we need to be represented as related to a show you're on, but we can't have any representation from you or any support from you for black-owned businesses, black artists, black writers, black actors. I mean, have you advocated for any black people on any project that you have been on, Zoe Kravitz? That's a critical question I'd like to ask your Zoe Kravitz as related to her argument about a lack of diversity. How many black people behind the camera have you advocated for on your projects? Because you sit there with your Catwoman role on this The Batman from Matt Reeves and think you're some sort of superstar, but what are you doing for black people? And when we look at what happened with High Fidelity, it shows us how little of an audience Zoe Kravitz has, because Zoe Kravitz has willfully and intentionally alienated the black audience away from her with her statements about Bill Cosby and her actions like going out here and walking away from black culture and then going out here and marrying a white man. So you want inclusion when it benefits you. You want to be black when it benefits you. But I'm sorry, the new black media is establishing a new standard, and we're not accepting that old standard where these people who want to be black when it's convenient for them come and try to beg us for support, because we know you're going to go right back to your white slave masters right after you get that support. So the new standard is this for people like Zoe Kravitz. You want to be a part of white society. You want white validation and white acceptance, and we leave you to go get your white validation and your white acceptance. Don't come to us complaining about a lack of diversity when you made no efforts to go out here and reach out to many of those struggling brothers and sisters out there and use your influence to go out here and get some of these brothers and sisters some jobs behind the camera. You're sitting there talking about, oh, there's a lack of diversity, but I'm sitting there going, how is there a lack of diversity when High Fidelity, again, a movie that came out when I was a teenager or a preteen in the 80s, was an all-white concept and featured all white actors and was a concept made primarily for white audiences? How is that about a lack of diversity? It was never meant to include us, but we have your people like Tessa, Thompson, and Halle talking about how they are supporting her about lack of diversity, when again, these are other actresses who never made any efforts to reach out and bring black people on as related to projects. I mean, this show, High Fidelity, it was not crashing servers like Netflix's Luke Cage, and most people just didn't care about this show at all, even though the concept, as I saw it, was an outdated one. It should have never been greenlit, because this concept was based in the 80s in a record store, and most millennials, most Generation Z, they don't know what a record store is. They don't care what a record store is, because they get their music on an iPhone with Spotify, and they could care less about a film, about a TV series set in the 80s in a record store. where some biracial girl is out here pining for white women. They have no incentive to go out here and watch this show, so this show had no audience whatsoever, and Zoe Kravitz doesn't understand that if you want to sell yourself, you have to make a show, a character that is appealing, and the show needs to have something that's exciting for people. She's sitting there, again, complaining about diversity, but there was no diversity on this show. The producers never made it with any sort of diversity. And when it comes down to a show that fails like this, all an actress can do is suck it up and move on. You don't complain about the network, about a lack of diversity because your show got canceled. You go out here and look for the next project and hope that that project is something that can be viable for the next couple of years. And this concept was fundamentally flawed from minute one when you really start to think about it critically, because a concept based in the 1980s with 1980s on a record store in the 1980s is just not going to be appealing to millennials or Generation Z or people who are younger. They look at that and go, that's an oldies show for older people. And when they start to see characters that are from the 80s, they have nothing there that connects to them that makes them care. So there were serious flaws with this show, and none of them had to do with diversity. The problems had to do with the story on this show. And in some ways, I could see this as karma for your Zoe Kravitz, because your Zoe Kravitz went out of her way to take digs at Bill Cosby, one of our elders in the black community. And here we have the white community showing how little respect they have for your Zoe Kravitz, just like they had no respect for her mother, Lisa Bonet, when she tried to go down the mainstream route, just like Zoe Kravitz is doing. And like her mother before her, the white people in the mainstream media are showing her the exact same amount of contempt they showed her mother, showing us how your Lisa Bonet only had her support in the black community only because of Bill Cosby, and only because of Bill Cosby getting her the role of Denise Huxtable was she elevated to a high status, because Bill Cosby gave her a role where she could play a girl next door. Unfortunately, like her mother before her, she would rather take the roles of being the white man's side piece or the white man's sidekick in their programs rather than be a black man's wife. And she's now mad because they canceled her show, but that's what they did with her mother back when she quit the Cosby Show to do movies like Angel Heart and appear nude in multiple movies. White men quickly canceled Lisa Bonet, and right now they're probably getting ready to cancel Zoe Kravitz just as soon, because white men, they don't want to elevate a biracial black woman above their own woman, and they're not going to elevate a biracial black woman above their own women. Only black men would elevate black women, but like a Zoe Kravitz, biracial black woman like a Zoe Kravitz, unfortunately, Zoe Kravitz says she wants nothing to do with black people, and black people who these days, after listening to new black media, they're no longer elevating people who want nothing to do with us. So your Zoe Kravitz, this is all, in many cases, her own fault, and she can't complain about diversity because she never wanted to be a part of the black community. And if you don't want to be a part of us, then we have no interest in elevating you. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to try some of my positive African-American fiction, like the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, and the John Haynes series, and my men's issues books, you can pick up all of those books in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Gumroad.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Coming to paperback and Kindle this fall, E-Steam blast from the past. Hell's aspiring angel takes on her demonic doppelganger in this time-traveling, action-packed E-Steam series adventure. Pre-order your copy of E-Steam